On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks schedule is revealed, and the schedule makers gave the Dallas Mavericks two absolute gifts. I'll tell you what they are on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
You are Locked On Mavs.
Great, Rusty.
Your daily Dallas Mavericks podcast.
No one's dying.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Amazing.
Your team every day.
Still can't even help it.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show, making Locked On Mavs your first listen today, where the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day on any podcast platform. Leave us a 5-star review. Take the podcast with you. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, Castbox, any of them. Also, like the video on YouTube and comment anything below. You can also comment on Spotify now. Go ahead and comment if you're listening on Spotify. Comment and tell me which game you're going to this season. Which one am I going to see you at? Let me know there. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Get into the Mavs schedule. I was gone over the weekend. I went to the Little League World Series with my dad, an incredible father-son event where there was just an inordinate amount of father-son duos there. It was actually very funny to see all the different father-son duos. Such a great thing. But got to see a lot of baseball played by 12-year-olds. It's fun. I enjoy it. So we went there, and I wasn't here for the Mavs schedule release, so I'm doing it now. Hey, it's a couple days after, but I think the Dallas Mavericks got a gift with their schedule. So I'll tell you about that. We'll talk about the toughest stretches, the easiest stretches for the Dallas Mavericks, and other notable things that I noticed in the schedule and in the games the Mavericks play. But I want to start here real quick. Why does the schedule matter? Why do we talk about the schedule every year? When the schedule release, it's not like the NFL where, you know, it's one of those things that's the most important thing. Okay, when are you playing and where and all this, you know, you can map out of it. It's not exactly that. But at least for me, and I know for you too, if you're listening to this show right now, it is August. You are listening to a daily Dallas Mavericks podcast in August. I love you. Absolutely awesome. You're part of the Raccoon Squad. You're listening every day. You and I, we are about to go through this every day. You listen to this Mavericks podcast. You love the Dallas Mavericks, or you've come to love the Dallas Mavericks, or you just love this show. Some of you don't even like the Mavericks and you listen to this show, and that's pretty awesome, and I like you guys a lot. But we are about to go through this every day. The diehard Raccoon Squad members that love this team, want to hear about this team every day, want to hear from the different people that come on. This is our next 6 months together. This is not just the Mavericks. This is not just what they're going to go through, and yes, I'll talk about all the implications for them. This is just as much about us as it is about them. Because you and I, we're about to go through this for the next 6 months together. This is our October through April, where you're living through it. You're looking at your calendar. I do it every day, and I know this is my job, but I also look at the calendar every day and go, all right, who are the Mavericks playing? Oh, they have a second night of a back-to-back tonight. Oh, okay. Oh, day is ruined. Schedule loss. First game coming up, the first preseason game coming up. I circled on my calendar. Every Mavs home game, I love it. I love going to the AAC. I love being able to go in there, meet some of you. I know I love getting to see people in the media and getting to see the players warm up and do all that and see people. And I love that whole part of it. Don't you love that game that you circle on the calendar and just go, oh, I'm so excited to go see Mavs Suns. I'm so excited to go see Mavs Thunder. You circle it. The schedule is important because it's important to us. Not just important to the Mavericks. It's actually probably more important to us than it is to the Mavericks. And that's what I love about it. I think the Dallas Mavericks, though, got two gifts when it comes to the schedule. Now, how could they possibly? They try to keep it fair. They try to do everything, blah, blah, blah. Yes, sure. They try to limit back-to-backs. They try and keep it fair across. Everybody plays 82 games unless you play more in the in-season tournament now, all that, and play-in games, all that kind of stuff. But I think there's two things that the Mavericks got from the schedule makers that the schedule makers didn't intend, but it is a gift for the Dallas Mavericks. The first one is this. The Dallas Mavericks start the season against San Antonio at home. Great. Love that. Love that they get a home game as the home opener. It's also the season opener. Then they play Phoenix. Then they play Utah. Then they play Minnesota. And then they play Houston. good little start to the schedule there. Get Phoenix and Minnesota, some tougher opponents. Houston, San Antonio, some not sure which direction they're necessarily going to go. Will they be very difficult opponents? Will they be easier opponents? Utah going to be an easier opponent. So a mixed bag to start the season in October. Bring on November. Okay, you've played 2 weeks here. You played a preseason. You've had a training camp in Las Vegas. You've played a couple of regular season games now, or a few regular season games. What word do we use for 5? And now all of a sudden November comes, and this is the first gift that they were given. November. This test in November, from November 3rd to November 27th, is insane. This is an insane stretch of the schedule, and this is what I'm going to call the November test. The November test, November 3rd through November 27th. They've got 3 back-to-backs. 2 of them are travel back-to-backs, meaning they travel the second night to a different destination. They're not staying in the same place. They play OKC. They play the Knicks. They play Denver twice. They play the Pelicans. They play the Suns. They play the Warriors. This is a tough. They play Orlando, Indiana. This is a very tough stretch for the Dallas Mavericks. You go through that whole spread. Just go through and read it. November 3rd to November 27th. Open the app or whatever you decide to use, your own calendar, whatever you use. Look down it. Back-to-back to start. Home against Orlando and home against Indiana. Tough ones. East opponents coming over here, but it's both home, but still a back-to-back to start against 2 tough opponents. Orlando's going to be better this year. They got KCP. Indiana just went to the Eastern Conference Finals. Pascal Siakam, Tyrese Halliburton. Good team. Miles Turner stretches the floor. Remember all the points he had against the Mavericks last year. This is a tough stretch for the Dallas Mavericks. And I think that it's great that one of the Mavericks' toughest stretches of the season is 5 games in. That's a gift. Because what does this Dallas Mavericks team, this franchise, do better than maybe any other team the last 3 or 4 years? Evaluate. They evaluate their team and they learn, what do we have? What do we not have? Nico Harrison scans across the players and goes, all right, who do we like? Who do we not like? This Kristaps Porzingis guy, I know he's supposed to come in and be the second best player. I know he's supposed to come in and be the guy that everyone is saying is the one that's supposed to help Luka get over the hump. I'm going to move him because it's not working. Something about it. The injuries, the chemistry, whatever. It's not working. Moves him for Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans' contract. And the Mavs going to run the end of the season. Nico Harrison looks at, the landscape of where the Mavericks are after Jalen Brunson leaves and evaluates his team and goes, you know what? We've got to take a risk here. They go get Kyrie Irving. He evaluated. He knew they needed something. They needed to try something. They went and get Kyrie Irving. It works out better than anyone, maybe even him, could have expected. Last season, he looks across the landscape. He gets Grant Williams and brings him in, goes, all right, we're going to bring this guy in. Even the fans thought that he was the Mavs' 3rd best player. Nico Harrison evaluates a couple months into the season and goes, this guy is not fitting in right now. He evaluates and then he goes, all right, let's take this guy, send him over to Charlotte. We're going to get PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford from the Wizards, and we're going to revamp our team right here. Completely changes it. They become the best defense the last couple months of the season. They make the NBA effing finals. This team evaluates their team well. So for this November stretch, this very tough stretch of the schedule, which I would contest is the toughest stretch. Maybe there's one later I'll talk about. But this is one of the toughest stretches for them to be able to go through that early, to play teams like Oklahoma City on the second night of a back-to-back, to play Denver twice, to play Phoenix twice early in the season. One of those is in October, but another one is in this tough stretch. To play New York, to play at Denver, at Miami, at Atlanta on that little road trip, to play at Denver, at Golden State, and then at Utah in that. You get to evaluate your team against some of the best teams. And I think going through that tough stretch, the Mavs get to face Jason Kidd, gets to evaluate what his team looks like. I'm sure Klay Thompson will be the starter through that whole stretch. And he'll get to see. And hopefully a lot of you are right. A lot of you are getting frustrated with me always questioning Klay Thompson's defense and what Klay Thompson's going to bring. And so why are you even questioning Klay Thompson? Why are you questioning this? This should be a slam dunk. This is everything the Mavericks need, blah, 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 all that. I get it. I get the upside. I also get the downside, and I think it deserves to be asked. But Jason Kidd will be the one that actually asks the question, and Jason Kidd will be the one that actually gives the answer. And I think during this stretch, he'll be able to look at his team and evaluate. I think that's a gift from the schedule makers. The other gift the schedule makers gave the Dallas Mavericks is towards the end of the season, which I think plays right in their hands. Tell you what that is coming up.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Everyone, and I mean everyone, has things in their life they want to talk about, need to talk about. You've got that thing that's just weighing on your chest. Whatever you're doing, pause this podcast even, and let your brain just try to go silent. What's that thing? What's that thing that keeps coming up in your head? Whatever that is, whatever is giving you anxiety, that pit in your stomach, whatever you've got that's just living there in that emotional center, you need to talk to somebody about it. And so you might as well use BetterHelp, because BetterHelp is there to help you out, to give you a start, to maybe just give you an entry point into therapy. I mean, just try it. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. Have used BetterHelp in the past. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day. I still don't with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. BetterHelp.com.
My first shot, my first make.
Thanks everybody for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. Appreciate each and every one of you for checking out the show. Make your second listen Locked On NBA. There's no offseason in the NBA. And Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts, including myself on Thursdays, in 30 minutes or less. No one else keeps you informed as quickly and as efficiently and keeps you as entertained as Locked On NBA. Available on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. No skips. No skips on Locked On NBA. It's a great podcast, if I do say so myself. I assembled it. All right. The Mavericks got two gifts when it comes to the Mavericks schedule. I talked about the November test. Early on, they get this big test that they get to go through. I'm excited to see how the Mavericks deal with that, how Jason Kidd evaluates, how Nico Harrison evaluates, how the team does. Hopefully they'll be healthy through that stretch, which gives them a good idea of what their team is, because this team has not been this healthy and this put together early in a season since having Luka Doncic, I think. That's insane. 2018 to now. This is the most put together, talented, set team ever, coming off of a finals appearance. Great. Love that. The second gift that I think the Dallas Mavericks got, to end their season from March 21st till April 11th, put a little asterisk next to that Memphis game, April 13th, the final game of the season. From March 21 and on, it's a pretty soft schedule. And what do the Dallas Mavericks do better than maybe anyone else in the NBA the last 3 years? Last two out of 3 years. They end the season well. They do all the evaluating I said earlier, and then they end the season well. They go on this run where they're like, all right, we're ramping up. We're ramping up into the playoffs. You've got what I went through and I evaluated, all right, what's a harder game? What's an easier game? And I counted 6 out of the last 11 games are easier games. You've got Detroit, Brooklyn. You've got Chicago, Brooklyn again. The two Brooklyn games are both the last week of March. Atlanta, I'm counting that as an easier game this year. I don't know what's going on over there. Then you've got a back-to-back at the Clippers, which is weird. The Clippers may not be playing for anything at that point. The West is tough. Who knows if Kawhi will be healthy? Who knows what James Harden's going to be doing? I mean, it is just going to be, that's a crapshoot right there. But if anything, I didn't put the Clippers in a harder or an easier category. They're with the Spurs and the Rockets. They're like in this middle ground that I don't really know what to do with. But you've got that. You've got the Raptors, second to last game of the season. They're not going to be playing for anything probably. Maybe a play-in berth. But you've got some easier games there. And I think that getting that little stretch, Detroit, Brooklyn twice, Chicago, Atlanta, Toronto, getting that stretch of your schedule late in the season, I think is going to be great for the Mavericks to take a real run at it. You've also got San Antonio twice earlier in March 10th and March 12th, at San Antonio, then at Houston. Not sure where Houston's going to be at that point. So if you want to stretch this part of the schedule, March 10th and on, it's pretty soft. And I think Mark Followell, Mavs play-by-play broadcaster on TV and friend of the pod, made a great point about this. He went on Twitter and did basically a whole segment about the schedule, which I appreciated, where he talked about how one of the reasons why the Mavs have this soft stretch to the end of their schedule and why some of the second half of their schedule is a little bit easier is because it's so East heavy. Because the NBA Cup, the in-season tournament, is early. And so you've got these games early in your schedule. You got 4 extra games that are earlier in your schedule that you maybe would have spread out later. Thought it was a pretty good point that they've got those games earlier. And so then now you have these more East games later. It's more East heavy later in the schedule, which this season is going to make the games a little easier than it was. So I think the first gift is a test. The second gift is, all right, go on a run. Go beat these teams that probably don't have anything to play for. Detroit, Brooklyn, probably San Antonio, probably Toronto, probably Atlanta, Brooklyn again, Chicago. These are going to be some easier teams. At least it's not Milwaukee, Boston, Denver, like Minnesota. No games are gimmies in the NBA anymore, right? Like there's no game where you look at the schedule. Okay, maybe Portland, maybe Washington, probably Utah this season. There's no games that are absolutely like, oh my gosh, this team is so bad. Okay, maybe Detroit still. But there's no games in the schedule you go, all right, it's an automatic win. Anybody can beat anybody. But you've got an easier stretch to the end of your schedule. I think that's a nice thing for the Mavericks if they need to go on some kind of run to get a 1 seed, to get a 2 seed, to get a 3 seed, to get home court advantage. And hopefully the Mavericks are ready to be right there and have this stretch. I almost choked and died just there. I just hope that everyone just know I'm okay. I'm all right. That's the 2 gifts I think the Mavericks got in the schedule. Let me know in the comment section on YouTube and on Spotify now what you guys think about those 2 gifts. Which one do you think is more important, the test or the end of the season momentum run? I'm curious what you guys think about that. And also, by the time we get to the momentum run, that March 21st, or even if you stretch it, March 10th, if we get to that point, this season is totally different. We are pontificating on pontifications right now. Everything could be totally different. So let's go through some of the tougher stretches to the schedule. So I think one of the toughest stretches is the November test. I mentioned that. It's November 3rd to the 27th. You can go check that one out. 3 back-to-backs. I think they play, 14 games in 25 days. It seems like a lot. 7 roads, 7 homes. You split those. You play some of the harder teams in the NBA. That's a really tough stretch. You've also got this, basically January is really tough on the Mavericks. 3 back-to-backs, 12 games in 23 days from January 3rd to January 25th. Really tough stretch of the schedule. 8 of the 12 are at home, though. It's a really home-heavy schedule there because you've got this 4-game home stretch playing the Lakers, the Blazers, and then Denver twice. So that's kind of nice. But it's a brutal stretch where you play OKC, Boston, Denver twice, Minnesota. It's just a really tough stretch of the schedule. So January is going to be a really big test too. So post-Christmas, post-NBA Cup, the Mavs come back. Maybe they come back into it, and then all right, we're ready to go. Let's get back into it, and then they get this real tough stretch. They also play Cleveland and Memphis to start January. Just a really tough stretch of the schedule. I think it's one of their tougher ones. And then this is probably the toughest stretch of the schedule, I think. Post All-Star. Right post All-Star. It's February 21st to March 9th. So right before that soft end. You've got New Orleans, Golden State, the Lakers, Hornets, the Bucks, Sacramento, the Bucks again, Memphis, and Phoenix. Whew, that is a murderer's row. And those teams may be all over the place by the time we get there, but that is just what is that? How many games is that? 1, 2, 3, skip Charlotte, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is 8 games, basically in a row, of teams that expect to be in the playoff race, not the playoff race. Sacramento wants to be there. They got DeMar DeRozan. They're feeling good. The Golden State Warriors want to prove things. They probably won't be there, but they might. The Lakers still have the best player on Team USA and Anthony Davis, so they expect to be up there. Just change their coach. He's going to want to prove some stuff. New Orleans, apparently Zion is looking better than he ever has. I don't know if you saw that picture. Phoenix is going to want to prove stuff. They got Tyus Jones, and they made some moves. Memphis, John Morant coming. This is a tough stretch of the schedule. So that is going to be a real tough. Post All-Star, the Mavs just run right into it. Home for New Orleans, at Golden State, at the Lakers. All right, get back into it, guys. let's get through this part of this schedule, and then there's a soft part to end it. Hopefully, you make up for some of the losses that you might take in this stretch in the easier stretch. So that's one of the hardest things. Coming up, let's talk about some of the other notable things. What's the game that you're looking forward to? What are the back-to-back situations like? National TV games. A bunch of people have questions about that. And then we'll talk about the NBA Cup and things like that. Just a bunch of other notable things about the schedule. We'll talk about all that and more next.
You don't believe you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is great. I love it. I use it all the time. Of all our sponsors, don't tell the other sponsors. This is the one that I like the most, that I've used the most. It is awesome. They have all kinds of different tickets and things that you can do and get. I try to tell you to go get Metro Boomin tickets. He's playing on the 24th. He's playing this week on Thursday at the American. He's playing on Thursday at the American Airlines. It's $110 now. It was less earlier, and now when we get out soon, the day of, when we get to that, it'll be cheaper, because with Game Time you get the bonus of looking at some of the events, and the prices go down. You've got that Game Time picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater. You also get that all-in pricing. You have to toggle the all-in pricing feature, and then you can see it up front. You see your total up front. Love that about it. I always have the all-in pricing on. Why would you turn it off? Always have it on. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem your code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
All right, Isaac. Let's talk about some other notable things from the Mavs schedule. We talked about 2 gifts that the Mavericks got. We talked about some harder stretches. Oh, there's one more easier stretch to the schedule, actually, that I wanted to talk about. One more thing. December, like the end of November into December, is kind of an easier stretch for the Mavericks. After that big November test early, they kind of have this softer stretch because you get the NBA Cup in there and you get some easier opponents. So November 30th, Utah. December 1st, Portland. That's a back-to-back, but at Utah, at Portland, pretty soft. Pretty soft. Okay. If that's going to be one of your travel back-to-backs, I think I'm all right with it. Think I'm cool with that. Then you go home for Memphis. Then you go at Washington, at Toronto. But Washington, Toronto, this is your next 2 games. Okay, I'm good with that too. We don't know what Memphis is actually going to be. I think that they're going to be better, but we'll see. Then you have the NBA Cup. That goes from December 10th to the 17th. There's no game scheduled between December 7th for the Mavericks and the 19th. They will have at least 2 games in that slot. One of them on December 12th to the 13th, and one of them on the 15th or the 16th. So they'll have at least 2 games in there, but that's only 2 games over the stretch of how many days is that? Like 12? So if the Mavericks don't qualify for the NBA Cup again like they did last year, and we'll get into that in a second, they could only have 2 days in that stretch. So that's a nice little mini break that you can get in there. Bunch of days off. And even if they play the 16th and then they play the 19th again, 2 days off, and then you play the Clippers twice at home. Then you play Portland December 23rd. That's a pretty soft spot in the schedule. That's a pretty easy stretch, especially with that potential NBA break in there, that you're only going to play 2 games at the minimum. You may play a couple more if you make it a little farther. So there you go. That's another easier stretch. A couple other notable things. Okay, the NBA Cup. So I talked about this a little bit. I've said a couple things, but the Mavericks group in the NBA Cup, the in-season tournament, is awful. In the sense that it is a brutal group. It is the hardest group in the NBA. You cannot convince me otherwise. They play 4 games against these teams, and then however many games you win out of these games, then you qualify for the actual tournament part. Remember that. And these are the games the Mavs play. At the Warriors, home for the Pelicans, at the Nuggets, home for the Grizzlies. This is the group of death, because the other groups in the West, Minnesota's group has the Blazers in it, the Rockets in it, and then the Clippers and the Kings, but Blazers and Rockets are at least easier. Blazers definitely easier. Then OKC's group has Phoenix, the Lakers, the Spurs, and the Jazz. The Mavericks don't have anybody in their group that is the Spurs or the Jazz level, or Portland's level, or even the Clippers level. The East, each group has a combo that like is easier than every team in the Mavs. One group in the East has Brooklyn and Charlotte. Another one has Toronto and Detroit. Another one has Chicago and Washington. So don't come at me with the East groups are harder. The Mavs group of Dallas, Golden State, New Orleans, Denver, Memphis. That is a brutal group. Group of death to me. So makes me think that the Mavs may not qualify for the in-season tournament. Do you want them to qualify for the in-season tournament? The NBA Cup? I don't know. But they could get some extra rest there in the middle of December, which kind of be nice. If you're one of those, just thought of this. If you're one of those people that did not want Luka and Slovenia to qualify for the Olympics, but you do want them to win the NBA Cup, you do want the Mavericks to win the NBA Cup, let me know. What's your rationale? Comment on YouTube or on Spotify, or let me know on Twitter. I'm curious if there's a Venn diagram of people that like, I really wanted Slovenia to lose so Luka could get rest, but I also want the Mavericks to win so they can play extra games in the middle of the regular season. Who are you in the middle of this Venn diagram? Couple other notable things for the schedule. The Mavericks play 7 of their first 9 games at home. That's nice. Early in this stretch to get acclimated, especially adding a couple new players. Probably get some practices in a couple of those days. I could see that happening. That's pretty cool for the Mavericks to get that. They have 16 games in January and March, so that's the really tough parts of their schedule there, as far as the most games that they have in a single month. National TV games. Mavs play 30 national TV games. It's one of the highest. It's one of the most in the NBA. I think it's like the 5th most or something like that if you include NBA TV. It's cool that the Mavericks are being recognized more. I don't want to lose Mark Followell and lose the Mavs broadcast any more than I have to, right? And so, again, on Mark Followell's video that he posted on his Twitter account, he mentioned this, that there will be 9 TNT games. 3 of them can be local. So they get so whatever broadcast the Mavericks have, which I don't know about. I'm looking for you guys, but I haven't found anything about it. You have TNT, and you can actually play a local broadcast. So 3 of those 9 will be actually have the local. It's also probably the last time the Mavs are going to be on TNT ever. Then you have 9 ESPN games. 8 of those can be local, so that's cool. So most of the ESPN games are going to have the local broadcast. 5 games on ABC, none of those can be local, and then 7 games on NBA TV, and all of those can be local. So you're really only missing 12 games. 12 games are not going to be broadcast in the Mavs local broadcast at this point. So we'll see where they end up being, and the local broadcast will be announced later, definitely before the season starts. I mean, come on, guys, chop, guys, we got to figure this out. The Mavs have 13 back-to-backs this season, which means they play one day, and then the very next day they play again. The league average is 15, so they play less than the league average, which is good. They also have 4 that are no travel back-to-backs, which is good, I think. The rest games I found interesting, too. Farwell mentioned this as well. Games where you have a rest advantage, so you have more rest than the other team does. Let's say you had a day off before this, and the other team's playing a second night of a back-to-back, or you had 2 days off, and they only had 1 day off. The Mavs have 7 games where they're at the disadvantage of rest. Last year, they had 9, so there's less of those. This year, they have 8 where they have an advantage. Last year, they had 10 where they had an advantage. So there's actually less of those in general, which is kind of interesting. But at least they have more games with that a rest advantage than a rest disadvantage. Decide if you think that matters. Notable games to me. Season opener, San Antonio. It's the home opener, too. Love that. That's going to be great energy. Victor Wembanyama, must see, all that kind of stuff. Klay Thompson's return to the Warriors. This was one of those games that was leaked a little while ago. Shams Charania just couldn't help himself. He's playing November 12th. Going back to Chase Center, going back to the fans and all that. That'll be a pretty special moment for him. Christmas Day, the Mavs play against the Timberwolves at home. I think that's important, notable. Hopefully I'll see you guys there, or spend time with your family. I don't know. Do whatever you want. The 5th year the Mavericks have been on Christmas Day, which is cool. The Boston rematches. The home one is January 25th, and then February 6th is the away one. That's where Kyrie will get his chance to avenge his own play and go play in Boston at TD Garden and get to avenge that. Last game of the season, I kind of mentioned this earlier, at Memphis. Kind of spicy. Both teams could be maybe in different spots of those standings, but they could be both fighting for something. I like when the last game of the season is like, okay, it's a team that actually may be fighting for something. Last year was OKC, ended up being a nothing game, but could work out for him. Let me know what you think about the schedule. Comment on Spotify, comment on YouTube. Let me know what you think about the what game I'm going to see you at. Let me know what game you're going to this season. If you could only go to one game, which game would it be? Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs, hanging out with me. Tomorrow's show, we'll be back. I'll have Blake from 105.3 The Fan to talk to me about the Mavs changes and things that they did in the offseason. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.